When you look at how our culture talks about surviving a traumatic event, the narrative we are handed is, well, it's almost always binary.
Right. Yeah,
It's
yeah.
framed as this clean, unquestionable triumph. You slay the dragon, you pull yourself from the wreckage, you defeat the monster, and then you just, like, step out into the sunlight.
You were in danger and now you are safe.
Exactly. The act of survival itself is treated as the ultimate victory. It's the period at the end of the sentence.
It is the classic hero's journey wrap-up, honestly. And it persists because it is, it's deeply comforting.
Oh, absolutely.
If you are listening to this, you've probably consumed hundreds of stories built on this exact architecture. We desperately want to believe that once the immediate visceral physical threat is neutralized, the story is just essentially over.
Right, like the healing could just quietly begin off screen.
Yeah, we really don't want to linger on the messy aftermath.
But then you encounter a narrative that takes that triumphant survival trope, completely guts it, and asks a terrifying question. What if the price of surviving the monster is becoming something you fundamentally despise?
That is the core of it, yeah.
Like, what if the cure requires surrendering the very core of who you are? So today we are doing a deep dive into the events of Session 16 from our source material, which is titled To Drink the Devil Dry.
A very ominous title, to be fair.
It really is. And we need to set the parameters for this exploration immediately for you. If you're looking for mechanical, blow-by-blow breakdown of the combat.
Right, like who rolled what initiative.
Yeah, or which spell did how many points of radiant damage, or the tactical grid positioning, we are bypassing all of that today. The swords and the spells are taking a total backseat.
Because the mechanics of the combat are, they're merely the set dressing for the actual devastation occurring in this session.
Totally. Let's focus on the mission here. We are dissecting the profound character drama, the terrifying loss of bodily autonomy, and the complex, shifting interpersonal dynamics that occur in these dark, quiet moments of this narrative.
Right.
Here is the central tragedy we are going to unpack for you. What happens when a character who sacrificed absolutely everything to build her own identity and her own freedom is forced into a physical and psychological rebirth she never asked for?
It's heavy. And to truly grasp the weight of what happens in the depths of Tsar Palace, we cannot just look at the ritual in a vacuum.
No, definitely not.
We have to examine the architecture of the bargains that brought these characters there in the first place. We have to look at the psychological foundation of this adventuring party before the first spell is even cast.
I want to start by establishing exactly where our central character, Vlessa, is mentally before she even sets foot in that palace. Our sources give us this incredible insight into her interiority through her own diary entries.
Specifically from the inside the minds of the cast document, right?
Right. And Vlessa is reflecting on her adventuring party. This group she refers to, rather affectionately but also kind of guardedly, as her, quote, polycluster of weirdos.
I always loved that phrasing.
It's great. But what strikes me is the profound, bone-deep cynicism she expresses about the very concept of morality. She writes about how she was initially so excited to have a paladin and a celestial warlock in her group.
Right, she thought they would be these shining, uncomplicated beacons of morality.
Yes. She literally says she thought they might set a good example of what a good person is supposed to be.
Well, you have to consider the context of that expectation, Vlessa is a refugee from Menzoberranzan.
Right.
For those unfamiliar with the deeper lore of this setting, Menzoberranzan is an underground drow city built entirely on paranoia, institutionalized cruelty, and the absolute terrifying subjugation of the individual.
All to the whims of the spider goddess, Lolth.
Exactly. It is a society where betrayal is a virtue, and empathy is just a fatal flaw. Vlessa literally sacrificed her own arm and leg to escape that place.
Which is just wild.
Yeah, she came to the surface world seeking a complete inversion of her trauma. She wanted to find genuine, uncomplicated goodness.
But what she finds it shatters that illusion entirely. She writes that paladins aren't required to be good people.
Oof.
They just follow an arbitrary list of rules, cross their fingers, and somehow get divine powers. And the warlock, in her observation, tries every possible contractual loophole to do the absolute minimum while complaining the entire time.
Which is very on brand for a warlock.
It really is.
Yeah.
She concludes that being a good person might actually be a, quote, scam. She questions if good even really exists, or if it's all just a bureaucratic system invented by angels to make people think they can earn their way into a clubhouse.
Right, when in reality, it's all just nepotism and random chance. It is the mental state of a survivor who expected to find heroes and instead found pragmatists wielding divine magic.
Yeah.
She finds herself surrounded by people who view morality as a compliance checklist rather than a deeply held conviction.
I'm not sure I entirely agree that it's just her trauma talking, though. Like, let's look at the actual behavior she's critiquing here.
Okay, let's look at it.
She has this infernal parasite squirming around inside her gut. A literal fiend gestating in her chest cavity. It's a lingering souvenir from a detour into the hells.
A terrible souvenir.
The worst. She knows she needs a specialized, highly dangerous, arcane ritual to deal with it. And she's been directed to the Tsar family, a noble house that dabbles heavily in infernal energies.
Right.
So she needs someone to watch her back. She approaches her companion, Santal, the very warlock she was just critiquing in her diary.
And the interaction that follows is just a masterclass in how transactional relationships function in high-stakes environments.
Totally.
Santal agrees to accompany her, and they actually bring along an assortment of sweets, breads, and chocolates from a local bakery to serve as comfort food for the ordeal.
Which, I mean, that seems like a deeply empathetic, humanizing gesture. It's the kind of thing a real friend does.
It is. But in the very same breath, Santal explicitly negotiates a future favor in return for their presence.
Wait, really?
Yeah, they establish a formal IOU. The comfort food is freely given, but the protection, the physical solidarity in a moment of terror, well, that comes with a quantifiable price tag attached.
Okay, let's unpack this and put this in perspective for you listening. Imagine you are about to undergo experimental, potentially fatal surgery to remove a parasite.
A terrifying situation.
Exactly. Your emergency contact shows up at the hospital. They bring you your favorite blanket. They bring you a coffee. They fluff your pillows.
A good friend.
Right. And then, right as the nurse is about to wheel you into the operating room, your friend pulls a contract out of their bag and says, I need you to sign over the intellectual property rights to your next project, or I'm not staying in the waiting room.
Yep.
That is essentially what is happening here.
Yeah.
How does a group of people functioning as a unit survive when the foundation is that transactional?
By understanding that in this specific world, transaction is a form of boundary setting.
Oh, interesting.
We might view it as callous, but for someone like Santal, whose very magic is derived from a negotiated pact, contracts are how you measure trust. A ledger is predictable. Unconditional support is unpredictable and therefore dangerous.
Okay, I see the logic, but it completely validates Valesa's diary musings. I mean, she is in an incredibly vulnerable state, and her closest ally requires a contractual guarantee of future labor just to stand by her side.
Emotionally, they are operating like independent contractors sharing office space.
Yes. So, with those terms set, they arrive at Tsar Palace in the evening, and the bureaucracy of survival just continues to compound here.
It really does.
They are escorted by a butler into this grand ballroom where Lady Violet Tsar is holding court. And Lady Violet doesn't offer to perform this incredibly dangerous ritual out of altruism. She confirms her own terms.
This is the primary contract of the evening. Lady Violet will spend 10 days instructing Valesa on how to manage this infernal parasite.
Right.
But in exchange, Valesa and the party must act as discreet bodyguards for Lady Violet at an upcoming Patriot ball.
A classic exchange of services.
Exactly. And Santal, functioning flawlessly in their role as a warlock, actually acts as a formal notary for this agreement.
Wait, a notary?
Yeah, they have the butler draft a written contract. They include specific oath preservation clauses. They sign it, witness it, and seal it with wax.
That is wild. They are notarizing a contract while a devil is literally eating Valesa from the inside out.
It's all about the paperwork.
Clearly. But once the ink is dry, Lady Violet leads them through the winding corridors of the mansion until they reach this strange stone chamber.
And this room is so specific.
It is. In the center of the floor is a massive 15-foot diameter smooth stone disc. Now, Valesa is a wizard. She deals with arcane geometry all the time.
Right.
So she assumes this giant stone circle is the focal point of the ritual. She approaches it with this intense sense of gravity, and she actually kicks off one of her shoes before stepping onto it.
Like she's treating it like sacred ground. She's steeling herself for arcane surgery. She's preparing her mind for a metaphysical battle.
And then the stone disc shudders and just starts moving downward.
It's not a ritual circle at all.
No, it's just a mundane mechanical elevator taking them deep into the bowels of the earth. Valesa is just standing there, holding her shoe, realizing she basically just took her clothes off to ride an elevator.
It's such an incredibly awkward, embarrassing moment.
It really is. But look at how that moment functions narratively. That awkward embarrassment lulls Valessa and, you as the listener into a false sense of security.
Oh, absolutely. It diffuses the tension of all those notarized contracts. We laugh at the misunderstanding.
Right. It frames the czars as perhaps eccentric, but mundane. It completely drops our guard right before the narrative strikes.
Which brings us to the descent. And the environment itself starts doing the heavy lifting here.
The atmosphere gets intense fast.
Yeah, the platform goes down for a long, unsettling amount of time. The temperature drops drastically. The air changes.
When the elevator finally halts, they step out and walk down a cold hallway that opens up onto a platform. But this platform isn't just a basement laboratory.
No, it's suspended over a yawning, seemingly bottomless abyss.
Valessa looks over the edge, sees the swirling mist and the faint glow of luminous fungi far below, and she recognizes it instantly. They're hanging over the Underdark.
The psychological weight of that location cannot be overstated. The Underdark is not just a geographic subterranean region for Valessa.
Right.
It is the physical, ecological manifestation of her trauma. It is the realm of Loth. It is the environment that birthed the society she literally mutilated herself to escape.
And Lady Violet has brought her to the literal threshold of her darkest nightmares to perform this ritual.
And the ritual begins with absolute, shocking violence. There is no bedside manner.
None. There is no, please lie back and prepare yourself.
Not at all. On this platform, there is a stone obelisk. Without warning, Lady Violet uses a massive surge of telekinetic force to seize Valessa and hurl her across the platform.
She slams Valessa against the stone obelisk and pins her there with magic, holding her so tightly that her feet are lifted completely off the ground.
Let's analyze the mechanics of that telekinesis for a moment. It is the complete removal of kinetic agency.
Yeah.
Valessa is not just restrained. The physical potential to move her own muscles has been overridden by an external will. It is an ambush of her autonomy.
And while Valessa is pinned there, helpless, Lady Violet drops a bombshell. With chilling, measured calm, she explains that the ritual she's about to perform is not designed to expel or kill the parasite.
Which is what Valessa came for.
Exactly. Lady Violet explains that if they expel it, the infernal curse dictates that the creature will simply reform in the hells, reestablish its tether to Valessa, and eventually find its way back.
The solution isn't extraction. The solution Lady Violet has prepared is to force Valessa to absorb the entity entirely.
To bind it to her own blood.
This is a fundamental violation of the anticipated treatment. Valessa came seeking an exorcism. Instead, she is being subjected to an integration.
Yeah.
She is being forced to become the anchor for the very fiend she is trying to destroy.
To facilitate this, Lady Violet produces a small vial containing a thick, metallic red liquid that tastes like a chewed copper coin.
Ugh, gross.
She forces it into Valessa's mouth to, quote, fortify her, then unrolls a long scroll written in Infernal and begins to chant, explicitly invoking the power of the archdevil Mephistopheles to draw the creature out and bind it.
It's a terrifying scene.
It really is. And I want to pause here and really dig into the concept of informed consent. Valessa had absolutely none.
None at all.
She thought she was getting a medical procedure to remove a tumor. Instead, she was ambushed, pinned to a wall, and forced to undergo a procedure that permanently alters her soul. Why is this specific method of violation so damaging to her specific character?
Well, if you look at Valessa's character profile, her core ideal is freedom. She believes that movement of body, thought, and spirit is sacred.
Right.
She is a survivor of a matriarchal theocracy where your life and your body belong entirely to your house. She amputated her own limbs specifically to escape that control.
Right. Her entire existence on the surface world has been an exercise in reclaiming her autonomy.
Exactly. So to be lured into a chamber, pinned to a stone pillar with her feet dangling, unable to move, while a powerful, aristocratic woman forces her to alter her very biology.
It's horrific.
It is a direct, agonizing repetition of the exact trauma she fought to escape. It renders all her struggles for independence momentarily meaningless. She is once again an object being acted upon by a higher power without her consent.
It is psychological devastation before the physical devastation even begins. And the physical manifestation of this ritual is pure, visceral horror.
Yeah, the invocation of Mephistopheles takes hold, and Valessa is overcome with intense nausea. She begins vomiting torrents of red ectoplasmic goo.
Emerging from this sickness is a translucent, fiery centipede. The sources describe it as not quite physical at first, more like the soul of the creature given form.
And the second it leaves her body, the telekinetic hold breaks and Valessa drops to the floor.
But the threat is now externalized and rapidly evolving. The centipede hits the stone floor and begins to grow at a terrifying rate.
Its abdomen swells massively.
Its back splits open, and wings sprout from the wound. Within seconds, it morphs into a massive, shrieking, fully realized adult hell wasp, luminous with infernal energy.
Now, as we agreed, we aren't getting bogged down in the mechanics of the fight.
Right, no dice math.
But the narrative beats of the combat are important here. Lady Violet casts a protective sanctuary ward on herself and just watches, offering zero help.
Of course she does.
So Syantal and Valessa have to fight this thing alone. The wasp retaliates savagely. It drives its stinger straight into Valessa's chest.
And the venom instantly paralyzes her muscles, dropping her to the floor. She is entirely helpless again.
Syantal has to rush in, use restorative magic to purge the paralytic poison, and unleash a final blast of eldritch energy to slay the wasp.
But the death of the hell wasp is not a victory. In the context of infernal binding rituals, its death is merely the catalyst for the next phase. The moment the creature dies, its essence surges directly into Valessa. The source material describes it as feeling like fire flooding her veins. And then the onset of the hunger begins.
Her canine teeth begin to ache, then physically lengthen and sharpen.
She is suddenly overwhelmed by a deep, hollow, intensely predatory hunger. And this isn't the biological need for calories, is it?
No, it is an ontological hunger. It is the manifestation of the parasite's infernal nature, now bound inexorably to her own soul.
Wow.
The universe is suddenly telling her that she lacks a fundamental component to exist, and that component is blood. Lady Violet steps forward and delivers the ultimatum.
She informs Valessa that this hunger is permanent. If she attempts to ignore the cravings if she tries to starve the hunger out on moral grounds, it will only grow until it completely overrides her cognitive control.
She will become a mindless predator.
Which is a terrifying prospect for a character who values free will above all else. Lady Violet then turns to Syantal. She points out that Valessa needs blood immediately to stabilize from the shock of the integration. She calmly suggests that Syantal offer a vein to save their companion's life.
And this leads to the second negotiation. Focus on Syantal's reaction here.
Okay.
They are faced with their companion, someone they fight beside, who is dying on the floor, transforming into a monster, shuddering with venom and new instincts. Syantal agrees to be fed upon, but they immediately negotiate yet another favor in return.
They look at Lady Violet, look at Valessa, and basically say, this will require another favor.
Yes.
Okay, I am actively struggling with this. I want to push back on the idea that this is just how warlocks operate. I mean, Syantal sees her dying, morphing into a predator, and their funny thought is leverage. Is Syantal just genuinely cruel?
It's complicated.
Like, how do you look at someone the same way after they invoice you for saving your life? Negotiating a favor while your friend is bleeding out and growing fangs. It's like stopping an ambulance to discuss the gas money. Does this completely change their dynamic going forward?
I would argue it is not cruelty. It is the ultimate expression of control in an uncontrollable situation. Look at what is happening here.
Okay.
Syantal is watching their companion turn into an apex predator. On a biological level, Valessa now poses a physical threat to Syantal. But paradoxically, Valessa is also now entirely biologically dependent on her companions for sustenance.
Unless she chooses to become a monster and hunt innocent people, which, violates her core ideal.
Exactly. Syantal recognizes this dependency immediately. By demanding a favor for their blood, Syantal is establishing a ledger. They are quantifying the unquantifiable.
It's dark.
It twists the concept of the supportive adventuring party into a dark, symbiotic, highly leveraged arrangement. Valessa is no longer just a companion. She is an investment, a dependent, and a debtor.
Every drop of blood she drinks to stay sane is another chain binding her to Syantal's terms.
Yep.
It is survival capitalism at its absolute worst. It's the ultimate perversion of the freedom she seeks. And the feeding itself is stripped of any romantic, gothic glamour we usually associate with vampires in popular culture.
It's very gritty.
The sources provide visceral sensory details. Syantal makes a clean, clinical cut on their arm. Valessa drinks, but the blood burns going down her throat.
It tastes of ash and copper, like very bad old wine. It brings no pleasure, only the bare minimum of stabilization.
It is a medical procedure performed in an abattoir. It reinforces the grim reality of her new existence. The magic hasn't made her powerful and alluring. It has made her needy and wretched.
And with her immediate survival secured by the world's most expensive sip of blood, the true, permanent cost of the ritual begins to manifest physically.
Right. Lady Violet, ever the helpful diagnostician, confirms the new reality.
Hmm.
Valessa is no longer effectively a drow. The ritual has fundamentally altered her species.
She has been transformed into a Dhampir, a half-vampire.
The physical evidence of this transformation is where the psychological horror reaches its absolute peak for me.
Because it's not just the fangs. The sources describe a deeply unsettling biological overwrite. Valessa's organic arm and leg, the ones she had lost decades ago during her escape from the Underdark, they begin to regrow.
But it's not a beautiful, miraculous healing light. It is a slow, grotesque process.
The new flesh creeps outward, bubbling and forming, and it literally begins pushing the drow mechanical prosthetics off her stumps.
We need to understand how infernal magic interacts with organic matter here. The Dhampir curse operates almost like a metaphysical retrovirus.
It looks at the blueprint of the host and forces it into a state of wholeness required to sustain the infernal anchor.
But it doesn't recognize mechanical parts as part of that schematic. So it forcefully evicts the metal to rebuild the flesh. It is a forceful eviction of her chosen self.
And the tension of this horrific moment is punctuated by the dark comedy of Quilbit, the imp.
Oh my gosh, Quilbit.
While Valessa is enduring this agonizing, grotesque rebirth, the imp is delighted. Quilbit scampers over, picks up one of the heavy, detached mechanical arms that just fell off Valessa's body, and starts swinging it around like a pendulum.
Treating this traumatic event like a playground.
It highlights the absolute alien apathy of the infernal creatures surrounding her. Lady Violet then proceeds to explain the mundanity of the curse.
Yeah, alongside the hunger and the fangs, she delivers the deeply unwelcome news that Valessa, who as an elf previously only needed a few hours of light meditation to rest, now requires a full 8 hours of deep unconscious sleep a night, like a normal mortal.
Which is just adding insult to injury.
It really is, but the thing that fascinated me most in this scene is Valessa's reaction.
How so?
She has just been forced to absorb a devil, grew fangs, drank her friend's blood for an IOU, changed species, and her limbs just grew back in a horrific display of body horror. And what is her main vocalized lament in that moment?
Oh, the shoe.
She complains with intense feeling that for 100 years, she hasn't needed a left shoe, and now she only owns right shoes. We have to spend time on this shoe.
Let's do it.
Why does she focus on the shoe? Is she just completely deflecting from the massive trauma of regrowing her limbs?
It is a profound, desperate deflection. And to understand it, we have to unpack the immense psychological weight of those prosthetics.
Right.
Valessa is an artisan. She didn't just buy those mechanical limbs, she engineered them. They were the physical manifestation of her survival.
Losing her original limbs was the price she paid to escape. Building the mechanical replacements was how she reclaimed her agency. They were proof that she could rebuild herself better than she was before.
So having her biological limbs forcefully regrow is a total rejection of her self-made identity. It erases the physical proof of her craftsmanship.
Precisely. It forces her back into a whole biological body that she associates with weakness and enslavement.
Complaining about the shoe is a psychological life raft. She cannot mentally process the monumental loss of her bodily autonomy in that moment.
If you acknowledge the limbs, you have to acknowledge the violation. If you focus on the logistics of footwear, you are just a person with a frustrating wardrobe issue. It grounds her in a solvable, mundane problem.
That makes the joke so much more tragic, honestly.
It really does. But if the loss of her prosthetics was a blow to her chosen identity, the final physical change is a direct, agonizing link to her darkest trauma. We are moving into the climax of the drama for this session.
Lady Violet has guided a very wobbly Valessa, who is, not used to walking on a flesh foot after a century of metal back up the elevator to the surface level of the palace.
And the final devastating reveal happens. Quilbit, the imp, with barely contained excitement, produces a small hand mirror. She holds it up right to Valessa's face.
Valessa stares into the glass, and she sees the final cost of the ritual.
Her eyes, which were previously described as amethyst, a feature that was distinctly and uniquely hers, are gone. In their place, her eyes have turned red.
We must explain why the semiotics of the color red matters so immensely in this specific context for her. It is not just a cosmetic shift.
No, not at all.
The source material explicitly specifies that red eyes are an immediate traumatic association with her past. In Menzoberranzan, red eyes are common, and more importantly, they are the color associated with the enslavement to Lolth.
Lolth is a deity so pervasive in her paranoia that Valessa refuses to even speak her name out loud on the surface world. Even though Valessa notes in the mirror that these new eyes are a slightly different shade of red than before, the visual anchor to her trauma is undeniable.
It's like looking in the mirror and seeing your abuser's brand superimposed over your own reflection.
Exactly. It is a permanent, visible reminder of the place that broke her. The sources describe her reaction as chilling.
She goes completely still.
She doesn't scream, she doesn't cry, she just glares silently with intense hatred at her own reflection.
Santal, trying to be helpful in their own relentlessly pragmatic way, gently suggests a logical solution.
They point out that Valessa is a wizard. She could just learn a minor illusion spell to change the color of her eyes back to amethyst. No one would have to know.
But Valessa reacts bitterly to this suggestion. She doesn't argue. She just snaps her fingers, casts a spell, and turns herself entirely invisible on the spot. She just vanishes.
And, just to cap off the dark comedy, Quillbit, annoyed that her toy disappeared, strikes the empty air with her scorpion tail, managing to hit the invisible Valessa.
And from the ether, Valessa's voice dryly points out that striking someone who has almost no blood left in their body is a deeply unwise thing to do.
But I want to debate Santal's suggestion and Valessa's reaction here.
Let's do it.
If you are listening to this, you might think Santal's idea makes perfect sense. Santal's suggestion seems so logical, just use magic to cover it up. But Valessa turning invisible instead. It's like putting a bandage over a mirror instead of over the wound. Why does she choose to erase herself entirely, rather than just cast a simple color-changing illusion to fix the problem?
Because we have to consider the cognitive load of an illusion. An illusion is an active, sustained lie. It would require her to wake up every single morning, look at those red eyes, the mark of her abuser, the mark of her new infernal curse, and actively choose to paint over them.
It would be a constant, exhausting admission that beneath the magical veneer she is permanently altered. She would be living with the daily knowledge that she has to actively hide her true face from the world.
Exactly.
But isn't invisibility also a spell she has to cast?
Yes, but the semiotics of the spells are entirely different. An illusion is a negotiation with the world's perception. It says, please look at me, but only look at the version of me I find acceptable.
Oh, I see.
Turning invisible is a total withdrawal from that negotiation. It is a rejection of the world's right to perceive her at all.
It's an urge to cease existing under the gaze of others.
Yeah.
She's saying, if I can't be me, I will be nothing. She would rather be completely unseen than live with the compromised identity that she has to actively curate.
The invisibility is a profound manifestation of grief. It is the action of someone who feels they have lost the right to occupy space in their own skin.
We are watching a character who fought for a century to define herself, only to have a ritual systematically strip away every choice she ever made.
It is incredibly tragic.
So let's bring the narrative threads of To Drink the Devil Dry together. This session is a masterclass in highlighting the brutal, uncompromising price of survival. Valessa survived the parasite. The objective was achieved.
But look at the invoice she was handed for that survival. It cost her her physical agency, pinned to a stone over the abyss.
It cost her her chosen identity, her hard-won mechanical limbs, forcefully evicted by unwanted flesh.
It cost her her interpersonal independence, leaving her biologically indebted to a companion who literally keeps a ledger of her life-saving drinks of blood.
And finally, it cost her the very color of her eyes, replacing her unique self with the visual echo of her greatest trauma.
She lived, but the cost of that survival was the self.
Which leads us with a fascinating, terrifying place for the future of the narrative. I want to leave you with a final, lingering question to ponder as you digest everything we've unpacked today. Connect all of this trauma back to Valessa's core character ideals.
Okay.
Her life goal, her driving purpose, has been to use her skills to create prosthetics and magic, to grant others the freedom of movement and choice that she was so brutally denied in her youth. She's a champion of bodily autonomy.
A huge part of her character, yes.
Now look at her current state. She is a predatory dhampir. She's bound by a biological addiction to the blood of her transactional companions. She's trapped in a body she did not choose, bearing physical markers she despises.
How will this fundamental, infernal corruption of her own freedom alter her ability to fight for the freedom of others?
Exactly. When you are a prisoner in your own flesh, when you owe your survival to the very people you might need to protect, can you still be a champion of independence? Does saving yourself matter if you lose the self in the process?
Or will this profound violation ignite a new, darker determination within her to ensure no one else ever endures the absolute loss of agency she experienced in the depths of Tsar Palace?
It is the defining question of her character arc moving forward. The physical parasite may be contained, but the psychological infection has only just begun to spread.
I completely agree.
And that is exactly where we will leave it for today. Thank you for joining this deep dive. We hope we've given you plenty to think about until we meet again. Keep looking beneath the surface, and remember, sometimes the most terrifying monsters aren't the ones you fight, but the ones you are forced to become to survive. Take care of yourselves.